Hey everyone, welcome to Pop XP. And before the show starts, make sure to click that subscribe button and click the bell to get notifications when we go live and we upload awesome new content. And don't forget, if you can, make sure to share our stream on all your social media outlets. We appreciate it, and thanks for helping us grow the Pop XP channel. Hey, what's going on YouTube? It's the brain of the mainframe here now, Scala Pop XP, and joining me as always is the teen sensation, the man that will never age, and he'll always be in our hearts, Mr. Billy Tucci. How are you doing, buddy?
I am doing terrific. I had yesterday my godson's first baptism. So
nice.
honor my first, I have first time ever had a godson, so that was great. And did some hunting this weekend. That didn't go so great, but today though, big day at Crusade. I'm finishing up a cover right now for Shihikyo, which is launches in about 2 weeks, a little over 2 weeks. I'm not sure exact date yet. But delivered Stephen Perros' amazing script to Mindy Lopkin, our designer, our letterer for lettering, and also the first 30 pages to be colored to Brian Miller and Hi-Fi Design.
Wow, man! So you're cranking away.
I mean, yeah, all the black line will be done, all the word balloons will be done, and hopefully the vast majority, the lion's share of the colors will be done before we even launch.
That's fantastic, man.
And I'm psyched.
That's what you gotta do.
What?
That's what you gotta do.
That's what you gotta
That's
do.
what you gotta do.
That's what you gotta do.
That's what you gotta do. You gotta get ahead of the game, my friend.
That's
Start getting those books cranking.
That's it. Crank them up.
Before you know, you're gonna every 2 weeks you have a new campaign.
You gotta crank them out like Moira Kelly in The Cutting Edge.
Nice, nice.
Well, what a great show we have today. This is a show that's it's something very personal to me. That I'm a huge Charlie Chaplin fan. I love my favorite actors, I guess, of, Golden Age, whatever actors are definitely Errol Flynn, Charlie Chaplin, who's probably my favorite entertainer of all time, and Steve McQueen. Yes. And I have my own little side Chaplin project that I hope to release at the end of 2021. But I just fell in love with the concept of our guest tonight, Charlie's London, and we're going to bring her on.
When we first discovered that? We're like, that is so cool.
I know.
When we first found out about Charlie's London, you told me, I think.
Yeah. Oh my God. I'm like, this is so great. You got to do. We have to push this. And Charlie was on our show once before. But in the meantime, why don't we introduce two of our guests? We have two more guests.
Yes.
Special guests, and they are both writers. Even actors, actors too, film historians, directors, and it's a great privilege to have these people who really are in the know of the film business. One of them made a film. We wrote a film that had starred Eddie Izzard as Charlie Chaplin in The Cat's Meow, and the other one again, he has actually done Chaplin. He's been Chaplin, performed Chaplin. And aside from being a historian and an amazing writer himself, I have the privilege right now of reading some of his work, and it's blowing me away, and I can't put it down. But without further ado, if I could please introduce my very great friend from the 7th grade, Stephen Perros.
Hello.
And of course, the amazing, a new friend, Mr. Stan Taffel. Stan, do I say your right name right? Taffel? Unmute.
That's correct. Yeah, it's Taffel, but I like the way you said it. It was cool.
Taffel, you're rather French, my friend.
Yes. Well, you know those Taffels, and I love the folks behind you. So, for a bit, why don't you guys give a little introductions of yourselves first, and then we'll bring Charlie's in, and I don't know, starting with you, Stan.
Well, I'm very happy to say that I first met Steve back when he was doing his show off Broadway, and he didn't cast me, and that set the tone for the rest of my life. And actually, it is true. I love the show, and I love the film, and I love the whole story. And thank goodness I moved out here so we can be friends. But I'm a film historian. I do run the Cinecon Classic Film Festival, which is annual. We did it virtually this year. I wasn't sure how successful it would be, but we had almost 20,000 people. Wow,
well done.
Yeah, that was a record. I'm privileged to be here today with all these experts. And Chaplin, of all of them, Chaplin is my favorite. Chaplin on film and Sammy Davis Jr. on stage. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm happy to be here and talk about Chaplin. It's something that I really can talk about without cue cards.
Well, yes, thank you, Billy, for having me on the show. Yes, we are friends first. We are now writing together on. We wrote together on She Return of the Warrior, and now the follow-up She Haikyo. And in particular, I'm excited to be here because of a film I worked on, Lionsgate film that Peter Bogdanovich directed called The Cat's Meow, where it's had all about a murder that may or may not have happened on board William Randolph Hearst's yacht in 1924. It takes place largely over the course of a weekend, with Kirsten Dunst as Marion Davies, Edward Herrmann as William Randolph Hearst, and Eddie Izzard, the great, at the time I met him, two-time Emmy-winning comedian and writer and politician, and just all-around brilliant, speaks 6 or 7 languages, performs in 4 different languages, and who played Charlie Chaplin. And so it was an honor to be able to make that film and be a part of that film. And Billy thought, oh, you would be a great addition to this show, as we are talking all things Chaplin with your guest of honor, who is about to come into the room.
Yes, so without further ado, Nile, would you like to do the honors?
Yes, everyone, please, let's welcome Charlie's London. Charlie's, how are you?
I'm all right. How you doing?
We're doing very well, and we're very happy to have you on the show. We know we got a little bit of a time difference, so we really appreciate you taking the time to come sit and chat with us.
That's no problem at all. I'm happy to be here.
And we love how Charlie's here is defying convention and doing, as what did Ethan call it? What did Ethan call your book?
Biographic novel.
Biographic novel. And if you give a little thing on it, but now maybe we could show the page just to see how successful it's doing now.
Oh, this is incredible. When did you launch? This was launched on Friday?
I launched on Friday for 2 reasons. Well, 3 reasons actually. One, it's the first official day of our school holidays, and I'm a teacher, so I'd have plenty of time to do all my promo. The second thing is the 16th of October is the date that the premiere of Limelight happened here in the UK, and that's where pretty much my story starts from. And third, because everybody knows me as Charlie's London because of the connections that I have with in and around sort of Chaplin's early life, my parents' wedding anniversary is also the 16th of October. So it just seemed like the absolute perfect date to launch it. So it's been going for 3 days.
Wow.
Incredible. And look what
3 days, and you're just shy $30,000.
That's extraordinary.
Yeah. That's for a biopic.
But I mean, you have to, we'll get into it, but I mean, the example though of the quality of some of the illustrations in this book. Yeah. I mean, look at the pages. And we'll get into these in more depth, but I just want, for the viewers that are watching right now, I mean, this is gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous book.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just your first biographic novel. This is your first graphic novel, right?
Yep.
And your charge into self-publishing and freedom of expression and to do what you want, with the blessing, by the way, of the Chaplin estate, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep. I've known them all for about between 10 and 15 years. Oh, thank you very much. I've known them for about 10 to 15 years. I first met them at a silent film festival here in the UK. And I knew Dave. That was where I first met David Robinson, Chaplin's biographer. Yeah, and it's just all gone on from there. I've done different things. Like I've done. There was, when it was the 100th anniversary of the creation of the Tramp character, I was part of a group that did that gave talks and presentations in Pordenone in Italy. Bologna in Italy. And I've also been part of David Robinson's collegiate for the Silent Film Festival in Pordenone, where they pick, I think it's 12 people every year from a load of essays that get sent in. They pick 12 people to go to this festival in Italy where they are part of a group, select group. So I've done so many different things. I did my master's dissertation on the false accusation that Chaplin refused to fight in the First World War. So I've been in and around it for a long time. This comic is just part of something that I just want to be able to have as a bit of a legacy, I suppose. I mean, no one's ever going to outdo David Robinson's book and Chaplin's own book. But even he really likes the idea of this comic, and we're in talks for him to write the foreword for it. He just wants to see a bit more about him in a bit more pages so he can get sort of an idea what he wants to write. But this is how, like, in with everything it is. I mean, the person that runs the estate, I send her the pages every single time, and she's on my Facebook. So when I posted the other day about how much it had made, she was one of the first people to congratulate me. So it's very much a hands-on thing. They're not people that just give you the license and send you on your way. It's very much almost like a family affair. I know that she works with the family who run the estate. It's not just her in an office, really. And I know that they were the ones that gave permission for it. So it's very, very hands-on.
That's incredible. And I have to say, though, I really love that you're doing this and bringing, really this, as Ethan said, like a biopic graphic novel into this medium. Because, I mean, I was 8 years old when I was first introduced to Chaplin, and that was obviously from the 1992 movie. And I saw that, and then I remember going to, there was a store here when I was a kid. It was called Lechmere's, and it was like electronics store. And they had a 4 VHS set. And right after I saw that movie and we went to that store, I bought that and I watched it. And all my friends thought I was weird. You know, like, hey, come on, check it out. You know, they want to play with like X-Men action figures or something, right? And I'm like, no, let's watch this. And I put it on. And we're sitting there watching, you know, Chaplin films, you know, and they're silent, obviously, and the music's playing and the words are going. I'm not really reading. I'm just watching what he's doing. But I was just so captivated by his ability to act and his comedic ability of just that physical humor and what he did in his face and the expressions at such a young age that I just love what you're doing with the book, because I hope it actually brings people back into how I felt at 8 years old, you know, saying, okay, they back this campaign, they see it doing well. Hopefully it triggers them to, hey, you know, let me go on Google and type in Charlie Chaplin. Let me see what he's doing. Let me watch some clips. Let's do this and let's do that. You know, and I really hope what you're doing kind of brings back a spark. You know, and I think you are, in a sense, in our community of you know, crowdfunding. I think you are bringing this spark of Charlie Chaplin back.
I'd like to think so, because I think there's so many reasons why in today's society his story is very, very relevant. So, for example, we live in a world with, you know, a lot of films that are heavily reliant on CGI. Are heavily relying on not the most amazing of storytelling sometimes. And I think that when you get silent films that convey that absolute acrobatic and that passion and, you know, completely pre any of that, to the point, though, that Chaplin, Buster Keaton, they did invent their own forms of special effects, but they were very hands-on in doing their own stunts. Because of their vaudeville and musical backgrounds, they were very acrobatic. And I also think that I remember David Robinson telling me the story that when he was making Chaplin, there was a lot of pushback in the States to this film being made. Like, people were actually approaching him and Attenborough on the set and saying, why are you making a film about this commie Charlie Chaplin? And even now, there's like, I did a video the other day, and even now on my comments on my YouTube, it's like the same sort of thing. Like, he was a communist and all stuff, and he wasn't a communist at all.
Wasn't.
Not at all. And I think that because there's such a big thing at the moment with cancel culture, and they tried to cancel him. Like, let's face it, it was a thing. They tried to cancel him. I think there's a lot that resonates with his story. I mean, whenever there's any big political upheaval anywhere around the world, you can give it a countdown of 3, 2, 1 before someone on social media is sharing the speech of the great dictator, because it resonates today so much across the world that it doesn't grow old. And when you think that one of the most famous men in the world was famous for his silent films, but made one of the best political speeches that even men in power can't muster, it says a lot about Charlie Chaplin. And I think that is, for me, is very, very important.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing that I just always love that when I came to the realization of something I read when I was in high school, maybe, that he was the first human being to be recognized around the globe. He was the first person to whose image and the name associated with that image, despite different languages calling him something slightly different. So in a way, more so than Jesus, because it was always sort of inconsistent in image. It's not a photograph, right? It's various paintings, sculptures, representations. But that Chaplin was the first human being that around people knew who he was around the globe, in the history of mankind.
And also, you can take a look at just a silhouette of his body, which was also equally as famous as the CBS logo, as the most Coca-Cola-ish logo. The Chaplin logo is it's still universal, but there was a time when there was hardly anyone in the world that did not know.
No, it's true. It's 100% true.
I would like to know. I know Nile and Billy, you've spoken with Charlie's London before, but I would like to know, and I'm sure there are some people tuning in. Can you tell me and all of us how you went from fan researcher to someone to the day you said, okay, I think I'm going to create something that is now called Charlie's London? How did that happen for you?
So when I first met David Robinson, I had been doing some family research, and I'd found out that my great uncle was in the same Lambeth work class as Chaplin. He's sitting about 3 rows back on that photo of the Handwell photo. He's sitting about 3 rows back to the left. And I started, weird little things started pieced together. Like when I remember being, how old was I? 8 years of age, 8, 9, when the film on the Robert Downey Jr. film came out. And my grandmother was a very placid sort of person, but when she saw that scene with him having the pint of beer thrown over him, statistical zeros, right? All you need is a hat and cane sitting on a park bench and people will know. Yeah, that is also very, very true. Can we get a shout out for Statistical Zero as well, because he's actually done a load of things on my campaign, which we're going to get to talk about in a minute. So he's incredible. He's one of we're very, very close. We get on really, really well. Hey guys, look, I just have my.
That's Billy's son. So technically, Billy just paid himself $4.99.
Technically, yeah, technically. So she was very like, that wouldn't have happened. That wouldn't have happened. And I remember thinking, like, why is she so animated? So I went to the library, and it was David's book I got out of the library, and I was very small, and I remember reading that book, and it's like that thick. And for a 9-year-old, it was pretty, heavy going. And I still couldn't work out why she was so animated. There wasn't really anything in the book that gave it away. And then it was one of them things that sort of got forgotten because you're 9 and you just don't, it goes right in one ear out the other to an extent. And then years later, when she passed away, I was about 16, 17. My mum brought up the fact that, where all my family grew up, and at one point they were in so much abject poverty when they were in the Victorian sort of era. Again, didn't really think anything of it. Then some years later, I started doing my family research, looked at all this stuff, and found that one of the photos of my great uncle that I was tracing all this family tree back was actually with the Chaplin estate, and I didn't understand why. And then I started researching more, and I found out why. And then things started to click in my head. Like, was this why there was always Chaplin films? The Gold Rush was on every Christmas. Every Christmas, that was a film my nan always wanted on. When we were younger, I asked her what she wanted for Christmas. And, thank you. I asked her what she wanted for Christmas, and she picked this thing with Charlie Chaplin on it. And I started thinking, okay, well, I know they didn't know him because no one's ever known photos or, we don't know. There's no family stories. But at the same time, maybe this is the reason why she was so animated, because maybe people in and around the area felt so passionately about him, and she's knew about this sort of family connection but didn't have the means to sort of research it. And that's where it came from. So I met David Robinson, and I asked him, I said, is Chaplin's sense of humour geographical, do you think? Is it a South London thing? And he said, no one's ever asked me that before. He said, because no one's really approached me that's from there. And I was like, well, I'm from there. And I can tell you that growing up, he did. I can see him do things in his films that I've seen my family do. The mannerisms, some of the things he said, like all sorts of things, and it just went from there to the point that I met Victoria Chaplin when I did I went to a film festival. My mum came with me, and they started talking about the fact that Sydney and Charlie would sometimes talk in back slang to each other when they didn't want anybody else to know what they were talking about. And then my mum just started speaking in back slang. And I even looked at her like, when did you know how to speak like this? She went, every kid growing up in Lambeth knows back slang. So this is how, it's not a new thing. It's just that I knew I wanted to do something, couldn't decide what I wanted to do. And then it hit me one day, why don't I just take David's words and Charlie's words and make something that everybody can appreciate as something that just gets them into reading both of them books. And to me, a graphic novel was the easiest. It was the not the easiest, but the most staring me in the face solution. A comic is the way forward for it. And that was it. That's where I am now.
Yeah. Now, I found a photo of your uncle with Charlie Chaplin at school. So here's Charlie is circled, and you could see the resemblance. And your uncle is right up to the left.
You go up, and he's the little boy 4 in from the left.
Oh wow!
Yeah, top row.
On the top row or the second to top? Oh, there he is. So that with the little gray sweater and a little something, a boutonniere or something on it.
It's got something. I don't know what it is, but he's got something there. But the scary thing is, if you look at pictures of me when I was younger, my brother when we was younger, there is a family resemblance. Like all that side of my family's Jewish as well. So yeah, it is kind of weird. I think that was 1896. That picture. So that's the Hamwell.
Yes. Yes, it was. And I have seen that photo most of my life, and I just got a heart. Now I know 2 people that are in that photo. That's
You know, it's very interesting what you are saying, because when I wrote the screenplay of The Cat's Meow set in 1924, now this is the silent era, sound hasn't come in. Chaplin, in terms of his voice, is not known to people. I wrote it as a screenplay first. It almost got made, didn't, almost 3 or 4 different producers, and I turned it then into a stage play, which reinvigorated interest in the screenplay. All this to say that when the script finally got to Eddie Izzard, who is a research fanatic and a very, very intelligent guy, he said, you know, Steve, I think he's speaking far too articulate and far too posh for how Chaplin would have spoken during the silent era. He said he adapted what to the sound era in terms of how he spoke, but we actually worked to make him a man of not quite as posh. Actually, Eddie he tried to play him as a guy kind of fighting, having his original voice down. A couple of times it slips during arguments with Marion. So he did some interesting stuff with voice there, and based on a lot of discussion and a lot of research. Because when you research 13 historical characters and then suddenly actors show up, they come with binders this big. You know, and they've done even more research than you could, because you've been spreading your research across a whole bunch of people. Suddenly Eddie's showing up with this, Carrie Elways is showing up with all of this on Thomas Ince and so forth. So you have to listen. You're not going to close off to these people. So it was interesting, and especially to hear what you're saying, that he actually was still, that was part of that's who he was. That's how he spoke. And anything we've heard in the sound era is really an answer to that, an adjustment to the sound era. Would that be correct to say, Charlie's and Stan?
Well, I know he had elocution lessons, but I also know that it never left him. And the interesting thing about South Londoners is that we can speak very much like this, but then we can speak completely like this as well. So it depends. And because London is such a, you know, it's north, south, east and west in London, and every single part of London's got a completely different accent. you can meet. I know I can meet another South Londoner, and I'll know they're from South London. Like Billy has. Billy, what's your? I always forget. I love him to bits, and I've forgotten his name.
Oh, Paul Jenkins.
Paul Jenkins.
Paul Jenkins.
Yeah, Paul.
Yeah.
And I knew exactly when Paul was on there that he was a South London boy.
I remember you actually. Yeah, I remember when we had you on. You were in the chat. You called it out, and he was like, "Yep." He agreed.
He's a South. Yeah, you know, 100%, you know, and I think that I don't think that London ever left him. I'm very, very passionate about that, because the funny thing is that's where the whole communism stuff really started, because he wouldn't take on American citizenship, because to get rid of his British citizenship means that he would have never been knighted. And he wanted to be knighted, and that's actually where this started from, was that people wanted to know why he wouldn't relinquish his British citizenship to become a citizen of the United States, and that's why they thought that there was communist leanings, or one of the early things. And I think he was turned down for a knighthood about 3 times by different monarchs, and our Queen ended up relenting and giving in to him because of the connection. I think she was lent on a little bit by Prince Charles, who was very close with Mountbatten before he died, and of course was incredibly close. Mountbatten was friends with Chaplin, so this is where it all goes back. That's what I did my dissertation on, so that's one of my areas as well.
And of course, you've seen the footage of Mountbatten when he was on his honeymoon, and Chaplin was there with Fairbanks. Yeah, it's incredible. Part of the thing that this country unfortunately did to Charlie is that they find things, or they try to find things when there's no more meaning than a comical situation. Example, in modern times, there is the moment where there is a truck that has a red flag on the back, the same way we do today. We have red flags on the back of cars and trucks to indicate that something is extended past the length of a car. And all of a sudden, this red flag falls off. Charlie sees it in the street, picks it up, and starts waving the flag to the guy down to say, "Hey, you lost your flag." And as he's walking toward the car, a whole bunch of protesters join behind him, and obviously they're thinking, "Oh, they're communists," and this is Charlie giving a hidden meaning, which he wasn't giving a hidden meaning. Charlie was not a communist; he was a hedonist. He was a humanitarian in a way that very few people have the courage to be.
Mm-hmm.
And and the Great Dictator speech, there were incidents where people were throwing things at the screen. They show it in the Chaplin film, but some people took it the wrong way, when in actuality, most people listen to it today and they don't think communist. They think he was right. 80 years ago, he was right. And he's just as right today as he was then.
I'm going to say something a little bit controversial, and I'm scared because I'm on a panel full of Americans. So please don't shut me on the screen, right? America wasn't yet involved in the war when The Great Dictator came out. Yet the biggest negativity to it came from the States. The biggest positivity of it came from the United Kingdom, came from London when it was shown in film theatres, where so many performers of it got cut out because the air raid sirens went off for the Blitz and everyone had to go in the shelters. Now, if you can see, if you as a person or a country or as a city can embrace that film and not treat it as somebody taking the mickey out of you, being over there in his ivory tower in America talking about the war when he's not in it, if that country and that London who's going through the Blitz can appreciate The Great Dictator, then I'm sort of not great. Yeah, The Great Dictator, then nobody's got a right to say otherwise. And that's kind of how I feel about that. And equally, anyone that calls him a communist hasn't read the words to The Great Dictator, because he clearly goes on about how dictatorship is wrong. He quotes from the Bible. Now, from what I know of the communist manifestos, they don't like religion because it's another form of control. So all these different things to me just go, you don't know what you're talking about, do you?
And this film was the most successful film Chaplin made upon its first release. He was nominated for the Best Actor Academy Award. He won the New York Film Critics Award, and he was the first actor ever to refuse the award. He said, I can almost quote it, "In doing so, I feel that it would be unfair for me to accept this award because he is an actor who aims to please the public." He talked about the electioneering in the giving of the award, and the Academy Awards were so outraged that even though he was nominated, and I believe deserved it over Jimmy Stewart in Philadelphia Story. But I believe that after he made that speech, being the first actor to refuse this prestigious award, that the Academy and all the people shut him down. And it's a shame, because I think it also killed Jack Oakey's chance to get that Best Supporting Actor Oscar he was nominated for too.
Well, in terms of U.S. response, my understanding in my research over the years was, and again, feel free to please, both of your research is much fresher than mine on this, is that as Stan pointed out, it was a financial success in America, which meant the people wanted to see it, the people enjoyed it, but there was pressure on Hollywood.
Yeah.
Pressure on Hollywood to do anything that tried to fan the flames of America's involvement in World War II. There was a big financial issue with all the studio heads. We lucratively distributed films in Germany in particular. I'm not supporting this, but I'm just saying that is the industry did not want to, except for the individuals in the industry who said, hell yeah, we need to go into this war. And there were plenty of those people. The heads of the studios, by and large, I'm not sure which of them were exceptions. The business of Hollywood didn't want us to get involved in this war. So that the criticism I have read over the years is not so much about the great dictator being communist as being ballsy enough to criticize Hitler, to say Americans should go over there and get involved.
Now, there's something very interesting, and of course, how well documented this is, we don't know. But I've heard it on pretty good authority that Hitler ordered a print to be sent to him, and he watched it alone twice. Soon as he finished watching it the second time, he signed the order that the film would be banned in Germany.
Yeah, I've heard that. And also, if we go to the Berlin Museum of, I think it's called the Berlin Museum of Natural History, although I'm not sure. I'd sent this to Kate, who runs the Chaplin estate. I went there 2 years ago, and there was a globe in there that was in Rudolf Hess's office when they actually bulldozed everything and got stuff out of there. This globe is the exact identical globe to the one that is in The Great Dictator, to the point that Chaplin had photo stills photos from whatever propaganda material there was that the Nazis put out, and he based the offices on those realms. And if I haven't got it here, otherwise I would have showed it to you, but I've got a photo of it, and if you put it side by side, there's 100% a correlation between these two images. So I don't doubt it for 1 minute. Equally, what is interesting to me about The Great Dictator is not so much necessarily where it sits in the sociological climate of what is going on there. It's comparing it to shoulder arms, because how Chaplin took such a long time to make shoulder arms, basically towards the end of the war, because he was so worried about what people would say, to the point that by the time he's made The Great Dictator, he's completely lost that fear and reservation. He's gone, no, I've got something to say. People are listening, and I'm going to say it. So I'm more interested in his mentality in between those two films and comparing and contrasting it, rather than how they were received. Because if you know all about what he went through with the false accusations of him refusing to fight in the First World War, and then all the things that happened to him in the 30s and all the scandals and all those stuff, and then The Great Dictator, there's a very interesting psychological pattern that's going on there.
Well, you're talking about a man who made shoulder arms when he was 29. And then here you go, all these years later, and he's in his 50s. So his state of mind was obviously very, very different. Mm-hmm. He could never get away with doing what he did. And quite frankly, Shoulder Arms is out and out it's such a remarkable movie. My grandfather, who he's long gone, but I never forgot this. My grandfather was born in 1909, and he would tell me, and everyone thought my grandfather was eccentric and senile, but when we talked Chaplin, he would tell me, I'll never forget when I was 9 years old watching Shoulder Arms. Now, he was born in 1909, so he knew that it was 1918, and he started to tell me the story of the film and how it was such a boost to him as a little child. And then I was able to run back then it was an 8mm print of shoulder arms for him, and he would sit there and he would tell me the gags before they happened.
You know, that was filmed 3 times. There's 3 different angles out there that exist with shoulder arms.
Oh, and I'll tell you something else. I have two versions. In my Chaplin archive, I have the domestic release and I have the foreign release. And if you put them together, it's almost like you could turn it into a 3D movie.
I was going to say, I'd love to see that done. I reckon that would be brilliant. But what is fascinating about shoulder arms is I went to the Chaplin archives in Bologna, and they've actually got like all the infantry of everything that was in there. And the uniforms are very ambiguous. Like, he purposely took different bits of British, Canadian, and American uniforms to make this uniform that didn't exist, because he was so scared of upsetting or offending anyone. He made this regiment to have completely weird uniforms. If I'm a military historian when I'm not doing Chaplin stuff, like my area of expertise is actually the First World War, believe it or not. And so I sat with Kevin Brownlow in a film festival and I went, that's American, that's Canadian, that's British, that's a little bit of French. Those gaiters are not, and I was going there, and he used that in something for his presentation later that night when he introduced shoulder arms. And what was really funny was I'm sat in the second row, and he's up on the stage, and he's going, "Someone's just told me that this uniform is," and he's looked over at me and he's gone, "What is it again?" and I was like, "Oh God, okay." But it's really, to me, it's really interesting. The bit I always remember that film is when he's got the camembert cheese and he puts his gas mask on to cut it. That's always the bit that makes me laugh.
Guys, when he made The Great Dictator, and that's really a film. It's mocking Hitler. He's part of this fictional country. Instead of a swastika, it's double X's. Did he want to initially make that film and have it Germany, have it Adolf Hitler? Had he ever considered that?
He did say after he did Modern Times, he was trying to write another script specifically for his wife, Paulette Goddard. And he said, how could I throw myself into feminine whimsy or think of farce when the world was being stirred up by a hideous, grotesque Adolf Hitler? So I think it was in his DNA to do it. But I also have to say, his best friend, who visited the set shortly before he died, Douglas Fairbanks, really affected him. And so the film has some dark moments. I have always thought that, because he was so coming from the heart, that, losing his best friend, did something. Same way when he lost Norman Chaplin, his first son, that they dubbed the Little Mouse during filming A Day's Pleasure, which unfortunately is such a sad film to watch. You can tell something's going on. This is not the Chaplin who gave us shoulder arms, or even the usual film. The man is going through a personal struggle. And so I think that The Great Dictator suffers from, first of all, it was going to be done in sound. So people were going to hear him actually speak as opposed to nonsense sing in modern times. So have such a wonderful idea. And no one, you remember, Jolson, jazz singer, 1927, sound films come in. And then in 1940, Chaplin's going to talk.
Yeah.
And
he resisted. Why did Chaplin resist sound, talkie film?
Well, he didn't want to make go ahead. Go ahead.
The only thing that I really know about his answer was he said that the Tramp would lose all its mystique. I mean, it's the same as when you read his autobiography. Now, his autobiography doesn't go into the process at all of the filmmaking. To the fact that Rolly Tovareau, who is his lead cameraman, is not mentioned a single time. And it's because he really believed that you give anybody the nuts and bolts of it, it loses the magic. When actually most people wanted to get inside his mind and see where the nuts and bolts come from. They saw the magic. They wanted the background.
I'll tell you this. If you watch Modern Times very carefully, I remember telling my mother this as a young child, and she was fascinated, and my father thought I definitely needed therapy. This is the difference in my family. In Modern Times, nobody actually speaks from the camera. It's through a television, it's through a radio, and Charlie is singing. So there is not one person that is actually talking. And that was his statement on he couldn't resist anymore by Great Dictator. And he had a lot to say. As Paulette Goddard had said, when sometimes Charlie thinks that he thinks, And, he put his thoughts out there so wildly. His sound films are long films. They're not 60-minute movies. They take 30 minutes. Limelight's 2.5 hours. Verdoux's 2 hours. He had a lot to say.
Yeah.
I just wondered why, with the advent of sound, why he didn't, why he resisted having all the other actors talk and the tramp is just mute, say.
I tell you what's very interesting. I don't know how familiar you are with it in the States. I'm sure Stan would have seen it and because he's done all this archiving work and things would have crossed paths. But there's a famous. You have the Carry On films over here, which are really famous. And one of the actors in the Carry On films, he did a song called "My Crepe Suzette," which is basically a French. He's mixed a load of French words that make absolutely no sense, and I'm pretty sure, even though it's never ever been said, I'd love to speak to him. He's obviously long past now, Kenneth Williams. I'd love to speak to him because I think the thing I'd ask him was, did you get the idea for My Crepe Suzette from the Nonsense song from Modern Times? Because if you watch them together, you can't help but thinking that's probably where it came from. So I'll send you guys the link if you don't know what I'm talking about and watch it, and just send me a message on Twitter, Billy or Niles, to say, yeah, I can see what you're talking about. Because it's definitely, these things they repeat themselves so much in history, and I think that's definitely one of them.
Well, I mean, would you say that in the end, he actually played it right? He played the early 1930s correctly when one looks back, that he didn't jump into the sound era just like everybody else? It becomes this incredibly unique voice in cinema to say that Charlie Chaplin continued to make silent movies in the early 30s, and they will continue to be successful. I'm not wrong there, right? The City Lights that behind you was financially successful.
Yes, and in the review, one of the original reviews for City Lights in February 1931, one of the reviewers said, "Have we done something wrong? Have we taken away silent film too soon?" Because Chaplin proved that if Chaplin who is silent, it's still golden.
Interestingly, my mum is probably my biggest supporter, 100%. And everything I do with any of my Chaplin stuff I always talk to her about it. She hates. There's only one Chaplin film she hates, and it is because it goes completely against her idea of what Charlie Chaplin is, and that's Monsieur Verdoux.
I knew you were going to say it.
She hates that for two reasons. One, he's a villain, and to her, Charlie Chaplin is this lovable tramp. Even in Limelight, he's a lovable character. Two, she just hates the way he talks in it. And it's really, and I always laugh because I actually quite like that film, to be honest. I love the tango scene in that. I think it's exquisite, but she hates it. And so she will not, if we're having a binge and we're watching a load of them, she's like, please don't put on Monsieur Verdoux. Like, just put Limelight on. Like, don't. And it's so funny because it's because in her brain, he looks and he is a certain way. So when you confront that with something different, some people just can't handle it. And I think that goes for the sound and the non-sound.
Well, the reason that whole film was made was basically because he was offered to play a Bluebeard based on the script that Orson Welles wrote. And then when Chaplin said, no, I don't want to do that, and then did Verdoux, which is why it's the only time that anyone ever given credit for a story. And it says suggested by a story by Orson Welles. And so, and Orson had animosity for the rest of his life over that. Even when Paul Killiam asked him to introduce the Gold Rush for the first time to U.S. television in 1970, and I have the film of this, you can see him talking about Chaplin, and he looks down and says, well, I don't know what else to tell you about this. I mean, it was very uncharacteristically blasé. But I love the film, too. Chaplin generally did not like to watch his movies initially, because when the kids wanted to watch them, he'd say, oh, no, I don't want to see that. And then he would sit and watch it, and the next thing you know, Geraldine said, all of a sudden, he's yelling for Una and said, Una, come in here. This is a really good film. So he was literally rediscovering it. And that happened with Limelight, which may be the most personal of all the films he made, which is why your graphic novel is so fascinating to me. Because when I went to England I visited with Kevin. We visited the site of the workhouse, which was the site of such terrible, tragedy for him, and they had torn it down. And I thought, that's so sweet that they tore it down. And someone suggested to me, and this is not really typical of me, but I took one of the bricks. The whole building was raised, and I got it on a plane. I have it home, and I have it in my Chaplin archive.
What is it that you have? You cut out.
I have one of the bricks from his workhouse when it was torn down, and I have it. I don't have it on major display, but I have it because I just wanted to just have a tangible.
You mean the one in Hanwell?
I can't even remember anymore. I don't know the town as well, but Kevin, they had driven me to one of the workhouses that had.
Yeah, because the workhouse that was where his mother went to one building, which is no longer there, and him and Sydney went to the other one. That's now the Cinema Museum in London, and that's still there. In fact, I only went there last year sometime for a particular showing of, I think it was Easy Street, if I remember rightly. So yeah, there's not many places. Well, it's weird. Lambeth and Kennington's weird. There's plenty of places if you know where to look. Like, for example, the Imperial War Museum was Bedlam Mental Asylum, which is referenced before it became a museum. You've got Christchurch at the end of Kennington Road, which is where his mum used to take him and his brother to sit in the warmth when she suddenly started, she'd like found God again. Then you've got the Three Stags pub, again, opposite the Imperial War Museum, where he last saw his father alive. You've still got Methley Street is still there. There's loads of little places that are still there, but you've got to know where to look. And I always joke whenever anyone says to me, will you take us on a tour around Charlie's London? I go, only if you want to go at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, because trust me, Kennington is not the safest place to go when the sun goes down. Right? It's still not. It's no different to it was in the Victorian times. So it's still a very, very working class area. It's a very strange place in the fact that parts of it are in like £1 million houses. And then other parts are so working class, so run down, same as when Chaplin was alive.
How did you handle Hetty Kelly? Or did you go into Hetty Kelly? Yeah,
Hetty Kelly's going to be in there. Very much, I kind of see her as his first realization that he wasn't really good stock, if that is a good way of putting it. Like, you sort of get the intimation, this is what I got from David's book, that her mum kept her away from him because she was going on for better things and she didn't want him to get caught up with this lowly musical performer. And that's sort of the sort of where I'm playing it with my book, because I'm trying to be true to what is known. She's often, I think he romanticized about where it could have gone because it never went anywhere. But I do think there was a realization of his background, because it's the same sort of time he's going through that period of he wants to be a serious actor. Like, he ends up on the stage with William Gillette, doesn't he, in the Sherlock Holmes film. And I think there was a period where he didn't want to be a musical artist because he saw what it had done to his mother and he saw what it had done to his father, and he actually wanted to end up on the stage. And then when that didn't materialize, I think there was quite a lot of realization slap in the face of him of where he came from. And while I don't think he was ever ashamed of where he came from, I think there was this thing that other people made him feel ashamed of where he came from because he was a working class boy.
I want to jump back for a second when you were saying that, because you read a lot about it, and I don't know, in the film, the 92 film, right? 92 is the Chaplin film with Robert Downey. That, he comes back to London. Mm-hmm. And one of the guys in the bar calls him, Charlie fucking Chaplin or something. Where were you in the war? Why did you refuse to fight? So is that true that he refused to fight? Or you said that that's not true?
No,
tell us about that. What about him and his service, to the crown, you know, come 1914?
His attestation papers are at the Tower of London with the Royal Fusiliers. And that might be something that isn't well known. But
his what papers?
His attestation papers, his exemption papers.
Okay.
They were bounded around. Originally, what had happened was he was too short and underweight when he signed up originally in late 1915, early 1916, and conscription in the UK came in 1916. So attestation papers had to be signed, otherwise he could be called up for conscription. However, he was in the States and he'd been there for quite a while, but he was still a British citizen, which meant he could still technically be called up. So he went to somewhere in Los Angeles where I believe there was either a recruitment office or there was a British embassy. And they said that by the current standards of like the UK recruitment, he was still too short and underweight. He was 5'5", and I think he weighed about 9.5 stone, which is just under 140 pounds to you guys. And that was not the right measurements. Interestingly, Sydney did refuse to fight and did squirm his way out of it. And I think Charlie took the brunt of a lot of things for Sydney, and there was a lot of scandals that Sydney did later on, and I think Charlie sort of worked his way out of them. And it was all to do with the fact that in 1917, someone had written a biography or an autobiography called Charlie Chaplin's Own Story, and apparently it was all true things that he had told this person. But the problem with Charlie was, and I'm sure Stan will back me up on this, if he did interview after interview after interview, he'd get bored and he'd start making things up because he just couldn't be bothered to sit there anymore. He told people he was related to Napoleon. He told people he was in France. And so unfortunately, this come back and bit him in the backside, because this woman's made this biography. She sold it to one of the big British newspapers owned by Alfred Harmsworth, Lord Northcliffe, and who owned, he was like a modern day, he was like an Edwardian Rupert Murdoch. And he bought it for a lot of money. And then the Chaplins threatened to sue. In fact, I think Sydney handled it. And they withdrew it. And he was very, very annoyed about this because he'd spent all this money. So he was also the Minister of Propaganda for the British government. So he starts pretty much spinning this whole yarn about Charlie refusing to fight and how he was a coward and how people wanted him to come home and how these films were a waste of time. And it was all because he couldn't publish this book. And unfortunately, it followed Charlie around because George V refused to give him a knighthood because of the First World War. George VI didn't really want to do it because of the whole communist thing that was coming out. It was only eventually our Queen that did it, and I think it was only about was it 1975? So it was like 3 years before he died, and that was because the Cold War was coming to an end, really, sort of, and she felt that she was in a position to give it to him, but she'd always wanted to give it to him because she'd promised Mountbatten and she'd promised Charles that she was going to give it to him. So that is what my whole dissertation for my master's degree was on, was that. And I was really lucky because I got to go to the archives in Bologna and I got to go through all of this paperwork and put all this together, and it was really, really interesting.
Oh, wow. So
we have so many things in this country, even today. We have fact checkers. So, you know, if someone says something, it's been recorded, and, you know, this is not political. It's just that there are fact checkers to make sure. And, you know, Chaplin was the most popular, famous man in the world, and anything that he would have said, he may not have remembered. And that's exactly what you're talking about. By the time that, you know, you remember, he was one of the first people to have his hands and feet in Grauman's Chinese theater. He was very close to Sid Grauman, but during the 50s, when all of the uprising of Chaplin and McGranary Injunction, Barty's reentry, those hand and footprints were taken out of Grauman's Chinese theater. To this day, they are missing. Nobody knows what happened to them, and that's a sad artifact that we don't have those anymore. And they were there since the 20s. And
wow.
Yep.
So in 1971 in Lincoln Center, they were going to honor Charlie Chaplin, and so they honored him in 72. Well, the Academy, see, everybody remembers when Chaplin came to this country to get his Academy Award. But in actuality, he had come to America to go to New York to be honored at Lincoln Center, and the Academy piggybacked. And basically from Lincoln Center, he flew to California. And it's very interesting that, thank God he lived that long, because had he not lived to be in his 80s, he never would have gotten the award. And then all of these accolades that like, for instance, Oliver Hardy never got because he died before, there was Keaton. Keaton finally got it. Thank God Chaplin did. And thank God you wrote this book, because you're talking about an absolute amazing story in his life. The roots of England. He came here. He didn't have to become a citizen, but he loved his England. He didn't want to give up the citizenship, and to go back as a hero. John McCabe, whom I knew, another author who wrote a Chaplin.
I know John McCabe's book is right down here somewhere.
Yes, and then Robinson is the gold standard for all the biographies of Chaplin. But I love the end of John McCabe's book, because he talks about what happened. He finished the book in 75, and he put a little coda, and he talks about what's going on, and he says, Charlie Chaplin passed away. He said legions his name, a people in a man, which was John Dryden's definition of the perfect clown. Legions his name, a people in a man. And that's what Chaplin was. He was the everyman. Wherever he came from, it did not matter, because the films were silent. You have 100% of the population that could listen to the films with their eyes, and then they just changed the subtitles into the proper languages. So when sound came in, Chaplin lost 95% of the audience, as all silent filmmakers did, because everything had to have different languages. So he was so smart in what he did, how he did it, and the fact that you're bringing him back to younger people. And I say that importantly because for those of us who grew up watching his films first on television, and some of us who wanted to archive it, we're thrilled about that, because there are people today in our country right now who do not know who Johnny Carson was, and that's heartbreaking, because there was a guy who was the gold standard, and for my money, the number one television personality in the United States, and Chaplin was, and for me still is, the greatest universal figure in motion pictures. But there are so many people who don't know who he is today. But anytime someone like you, who gets an idea to share it with younger audiences in a medium that they embrace, that brings him back. When Robert Downey Jr. was nominated for the Academy Award as Chaplin, he said, "What do you want to see come from this?" He said, "All I want is for people to watch Charlie Chaplin movies." And people did. And as a side note, Dan Kamen, who's a wonderful
I know Dan Kamen.
Dan's a great friend. Dan got me hired on the Chaplin movie, and I got paid money. I provided Robert Downey Jr. all the footage he used of Charlie Chaplin without makeup, so he could study Chaplin. So he really embraced it. I love what they did with the movie. As far as the performances, I have other issues with other things. Unlike Meow, which I think is just fabulous. Right away.
I just want to jump, because it's funny you talk about, and thank you, Stan, I appreciate that. Chaplin as chronicler of his own life. When I first researched Cat's Meow, it was pre-internet. It was 89, 90, because the script was around for 10 years before Lionsgate was going to make it. And I remember reading Chaplin's autobiography, and there is an index. I always love when an autobiography or a biography has an index. I hate when they don't. When you're trying to find something specific, you got to flip through every page. But it has an index. And I remember looking up Lita Gray, and like, oh, she's not there. Wait, no, there must be something wrong. I look up marriages. And and in this big book, it's just a paragraph that he says, around this time I was married a second time. Since I have children, suffice to say, it did not work out. Basically that's all he says, like, oh Christ, okay. So Chaplin and others are the reasons why this mystery of the Cat's Meow endures, because Chaplin, who did not have to mention the death of Thomas Ince in his book, said something about when he's somewhere in the midst of writing about the gold rush, which was in production at the time. He said, around this time, producer Thomas Ince passed away, and rumors began to circulate that it was murder. I know this to be untrue, and the supposition of how he knows it is something that's untrue, which is I know this to be untrue because I remember visiting him on his deathbed 2 weeks before he died. Now, there was no deathbed 2 weeks before he died. So I've always had something in my head, that was a signal. Chaplin was sending a message through his autobiography that if I know it to be untrue through something that I posit that could not have happened, therefore I am secretly telling you all that it's true. That's all I can think.
It's funny you talk about this stuff because Chaplin started trending and people literally my inbox on Twitter blew up this evening. Chaplin being a paedophile started trending on Twitter.
Yeah.
And people were going to me, oh, it's really bad timing for your books. I went, no, it's not. For the simple fact that if anyone cares to do any reading around the subject whatsoever, they'll realise that Mildred Harris was very much like she was not under the age of consent. The whole thing with Lita Gray was a complete and utter fiasco to the fact that I do believe her parents faked her birth certificate, which is how she ended up with the part in The Kid and then originally the part in The Gold Rush till she got pregnant and she was replaced. And equally, Paulette Goddard was 25 when they started dating. And yes, Una was 18, but she was the love of his life. He stayed with her forever. And if he was actually into incredibly young women, wouldn't he have traded her in for a younger model when she got older? So anyone that actually does their research, it didn't bother me at all. People were going, aren't you a little bit scared? You've just brought this book out. I was like, no, because if they read my book, they'll realise it's rubbish. If they read the books that exist, they know it's rubbish. This stuff comes in circulation every couple of years anyway.
Well, it's so ridiculous because people are looking at things through the prism of their time. Life expectancy in the teens and 20s is not the number it is today. People married younger. My grandmother was a 16-year-old bride. It was never odd when I was a boy. It's still, that's just how old people, women married off to, and parents wanted their daughters at that age to marry a successful businessman, or someone with money and so forth. The idea of we're gonna hand our daughter off to someone who can take care of her now. So this idea of looking at it through the prism of today makes absolutely no sense. It is a particularly unsophisticated, uneducated way to look at history. If you look at it now, I think what was life expectancy like? The average life expectancy was something in, was it 40s, 50s average life expectancy at that time? So
my great grandmother was 15 as well. She was, came over from the boat on Italy.
This was not unusual. This was the way it was done.
We were with Stephen, Charlie's, if you remember. David Robinson was doing a YouTube live video, and I asked him about the events of the Oneida in 1924, and he answered it. It was one of the questions he answered, remember? And he said, "Oh well, everyone's got secrets, and Chaplin's got a lot of them, something like that,
David Tothero told me that his father said, "Oh yeah, he was on the boat." I mean, that's basically, he says, I remember him being picked up to go. He said he remembered it completely because when I did the play in 97, David Tothero, and I forget the woman's name, Stan, you probably remember them. They're LA based. They were doing a magazine, Limelight. Wasn't it called Limelight, I think, with Cordo?
Yeah, I actually, I wrote for every one of them.
Oh, wow, okay. And they did an interview and an article about it, and I asked them, and Roland wasn't alive back in 97. That can't be true, was he? How did Roland die very old? How old was he alive back then? I don't think, because I remember David asking someone. David said, let me ask. And he asked, and I don't know whether he actually asked his father that he could possibly still be alive, but he said, yeah, no, he remembers him having gone. So it's one of the sort of things I always recall from speaking to David about this. But yeah, and it's because all of them spoke in some strange coded language, no matter whose book, whether it was Marion Davies' memoirs from the times we had. She tells, the way she describes the tale is different the way someone else describes the tale. Everybody's story was so confused, and there was no paparazzi at the dock the way there would be today for something like this. And hers controlled so much more information than anyone before or since could possibly control. And had politicians in his pocket, and had just gotten the president elected. So it's because I always say never found the smoking gun, but every time I opened the door, there was a waft of smoke coming at me. And no matter where I looked.
Chaplin and Marion Davies were in Show People together, weren't they?
Yes, he appeared as. Yes.
I was talking. I just had an absolute brain moment. I'm like, no, I've got the image, the still in my head. I know, but what makes me laugh with that is they tried to hide something was going on. Even in a silent film, you can see the sexual tension between those two in that scene. It's come on,
No, I used a piece of history in the film, which is that Sunday when they were on the yacht. Grace Kingsley published that Marion and Chaplin were out at Montmartre on Hollywood Boulevard. They were reporting that there was a dancer, but Charlie couldn't take his eyes off Marion's blonde beauty. I mean, that would have driven Hearst nuts to read that.
To murder.
Well, in theory.
To murder.
The wrong one.
In Whisper's theory.
There were so many people. I mean, when you think about it, even today, if you think about the most beloved performers today, and not necessarily our generation of performers, but there's always controversy, and there are always people saying negative things. Even older people, like us. Every time Justin Bieber does something wrong, I'm the first one to scream, "What an idiot!" I mean, what is his problem with all this money? J. Edgar Hoover started keeping a track of Chaplin's doings for decades, and he wanted to nail him, and finally got him in '52 to not come back into the country. And a lot of people don't know that the McGranary injunction that barred Chaplin had lapsed. And unfortunately for us, Chaplin said, "Screw you, America, I'm not coming back anyway."
Mm-hmm.
And then,
That's my understanding of it. My understanding is he was never actually kicked out. He was told he had to go in front of HUAC when he came home, and he went, "No, I don't think so." And he sent some very close friends, and also Una and Sydney back, and Sydney's wife at the time, to get everything they could. Because I remember David telling me that when he first wrote his biography, he literally had raw archives. There was just trunks and trunks and trunks of stuff in Vive in the house, and how Una was letting him have all this access to stuff. And he wasn't only he had to do two jobs. He was archiving it and trying to find the relevant stuff in the chronological order to write a biography, which to me is astounding. I've got a qualification in archiving. I don't think I could go through that lot and make a coherent set, a book out of it. So, yeah.
And funny, you mentioned the stuff that was in the archive. Sidney Chaplin had left stuff there. And one of the things that color Kodachrome home movies of the filming of The Great Dictator.
Mm-hmm.
And all that footage was made available, and you can see it on the Y2K releases. But there are things in that Chaplin archive. There are a couple of things I really can't say in public that I know that are there right now that are really fascinating. And I don't even think Kevin was allowed to see what I'm talking about. But there is stuff yet to be seen on Charlie Chaplin, and there is yet stuff to be read in your wonderful book, which I can hardly wait for this thing to come out.
Can we hit the campaign now and show her video, Asha's video? Sorry. Yeah.
Oh, you can call it
The video. Okay.
Yeah, let's check out the video.
But the man who gives the London bobbies a battle with the crowds is, yes, Charlie Chaplin.
Well done. Well done.
Well done.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So, what do people get? You gotta turn that off. You gotta mute that now. We're all getting.
Take the screen off and put it back on again. I think that will help.
I muted the share screen.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So, what do they get with the book? I saw that there's a special one-shot about Stan Laurel and Charlie, and they get a comic and stretch goals. I know you've unlocked some stretch goals. So, what's in the whole package?
Well, you can get the 3 different covers that are the covers that are on the trailer. They're all completely different. When I decided that I wanted to do some variant covers, it was more of a fact of I wanted to give people something different. So this is obviously the really classic one that everybody will know. That's Chaplin. And then I had it sort of designed where you'd see the streets, the London streets behind. This is the one I call much more the comic one, because it's the little small Chaplin. He's running through the streets of London, and then there's the tramp on the floor, on the cobbles in the rain. So you get the idea that this harsh Victorian streets is what helped to create this character. And then the last one is almost
My
like
favorite.
London being his playground. That currently is being coloured. I do have the coloured version that I'm happy to show you. I'll bring it up in a minute.
Yeah.
That is going to be another stretch goal. So it will be a print that will be available. And also on the first 30 days of the campaign, I had a 24-hour special that was the Donald Delay cover, which is this one, but it was black and white. For the next 30 days, the 24-hour special is going to be that Carl Stefan cover, but coloured. And then if you've got the free, basically whatever tier that you've backed, you will get the print of it, which means if you've backed the 3 covered tier, which is the featured tier, you've already unlocked, you've already got the 2 covers in virgin print. The Carl Stefan cover is now been unlocked in a virgin print as well, and you'll get the coloured version as an unlocked print. So you'll have the whole set of each cover and each print. And I am trying to work out the way at the moment that if you bought the first 24-hour variant, I will email you a code for the second one, and you will get free postage if you purchase the second one, rather than you paying for the postage again. So I'm trying to see how you do that, but I'm definitely going to offer something for everyone that's backed it. The one that is probably the most amazing one on there is the one at the bottom, which is the Keystone Kit and Caboodle tier, which gives you everything, which includes a hand-drawn sketch card by Statistical Zero, who I think is still in the chat. He's made 200 of these sketch cards, and they are all completely different. Everyone's going to get one of those that backs that tier. You get all of the covers. You get all of the prints. The only 2 covers you don't get in there are the 24-hour variants, because I did make them exclusive. You also get the Kid one-shot story, which is a small collection of stories based around the 1921 film The Kid. And you get this book, which is a one-shot about the friendship between Stan Laurel and Charlie Chaplin between 1910 and 1912, and it's called From Kennington to Keystone. And that's a page from the book. So you get a lot in that package. You also get a Carno's Army embroidered patch. You get some stickers, bookmarks, all that sort of thing. So there's a lot here. So this was the first stretch goal that got unlocked. It was a print. This picture here, which is drawn by me. And I'm going to sign those. That was the 5K stretch goal. You also get this sticker, which is so cute. I really love this. I love the fact that 6 a.m. comics drew me with my mouth open, always talking, which is no massive surprise. We got this one, which was the virgin print of the Carl Stefan cover. And then the 20K stretch goal unlocked this book, Kid Capers, which is absolutely brilliant. If you scroll down, look at some of the pages, it's that very... Do you remember Paperman by Disney? The silent film. Yep. It's very, very much, if you scroll down, you'll see it's very, very similar in style to that. It's 4 short stories. They're all based around sort of the time in that you don't see, you know, in the kid where it's like 5 years later. These stories are meant to be in between those 5 years. So these little tiny shorts that are really cute. They're about 4 or 5 pages each. And of course it's officially endorsed. It's officially licensed. I do believe there's some talk we're going to get it in the museum shop in Vevey, so in the Chaplin Museum, which is cool. So it's mind blowing for me, like that this is all going on. I'm trying to coordinate all of this at the same time.
So how long have you been working on this book?
18 months, I think now.
Okay. Tell us a bit about your artist. I mean, the work is, I mean, the artwork is phenomenal in the book.
Well, the Kid Capers book is done by
Statistical.
Yeah, he's done that. Who's also done the sketch card. Carl Stefan, who's a creator of a book called Mary Boys, has done that picture that you just saw there.
Yep.
This one, so that's the cover. But Mickey, who is what he goes by, that's his business name. Mickey is an artist who's worked. Funny enough, Carl Stefan was the person originally that was going to do the interiors. I wanted him to do the interiors because he had that style. Mm-hmm. But he was working on his own book, and he said, "I just can't give this book the time that it deserves." So he got me in touch with a friend of his who is very similar in style, and he just blew me away with what he'd done. So he's working on the interiors. The Stan and Charlie one shot is drawn by a man called William Crawford Hazel, who's UK based, and he's just nailed, like Stan Laurel in that book is incredible. But these are the panels and pages by Mickey. This is the first 3 pages. So if you imagine this is what the first 3 pages are like, what the rest of the book is going to look like. So the story starts with him on the set of Limelight. He's just been given a newspaper where it's again talking about him being a communist, which he of course denies. He's sick and tired of it by this point. He's having the premiere in London, and it goes to the next couple of pages are him and Una actually on the boat talking about the fact he's just received this telegram. And then it goes to London where he's staying at the Savoy, and very restless one night after being at a party with Doug Fairbanks Jr. and Laurence Olivier and his wife. He decides that he's going to have a walk around London. And it's from that point that you go back to his childhood. And the idea is that every different point of his life is pivotal to where he grew up and where he came from. So as you see these different landmarks, you see different parts of his life. So there's a very famous building in London that's nothing really special, but it's the railings are very much something that we believe he got the inspiration for City Lights. So it's all these things about how his life sort of intertwined with his characters. So I wanted to do it really differently. I didn't want to do your typical Once Upon a Time. It starts in 1889. I wanted it to be thematic, and I wanted there to be something a bit different. So at the moment, we're working with the idea that the 1950s stuff is going to be in colour. The Victorian era is going to be in sepia tones, and then his black and white era is going to be in black and white tones. So as you go through the book at these different points, the time is dictated. Oh, thank you so much. The time is dictated by the colour sequence. Mm-hmm. So that's what you're going to be getting with this book. It's going to be at the very minimum 64 pages, but we are talking, when Mickey and I have been going through the script, because it ends in 1921, this book, we've been talking about the idea that one of the stretch goals might be added another 10 pages because there's things we don't want to leave out. So this book could effectively be a 96-page book, depending on what happens. But we didn't want to set it as a 96-page book because then, if in case we overreached it, like this is my first campaign, I'm trying to be really realistic in what I do. So it's a case of I send him the script, and when he's done the pages, we then work out how many pages this chapter is, and then we're going to go from there. But I've seen it done on other campaigns where they've had stretch goals as pages. So it's something that's done. We're just going to see where it goes, really.
I think that's a good idea because when I did my first graphic novel with Stoker and Wells about a fictitious adventure between Bram Stoker and H.G. Wells, it was based on a screenplay that had not been produced, and we I talked with my partners, and they all said, yeah, it's been about 56, 57 pages. And then as I started writing it, I was cramming way too much, even knowing that I had to cut from my 115-page screenplay. I cut and I cut, and finally it turned out to be a 94-page book. We actually had to do a second Kickstarter we could still satisfy everybody who pledged, but it would have meant cutting things really tight, cutting promotions really tight. So we did a second one. So if you can actually do a stretch goal that takes into account the things you might be anticipating are a better book at that length, then I think that's a smart idea. I wish I had thought that at the time. So it's worth it. Well, worth it, I would think.
When's the next installment of that? When's the next Stoker and Wells?
Well, Stoker and Wells, as far as the next a presentation to people, we're actually going to launch. We have a coming soon page on Indiegogo, even though it's available on Amazon, available on Comixology. We're going to start a campaign at the end of the month, or maybe right at the beginning of November, that's going to sell the book, but also things that people can't get. Every copy will be signed. We're going to have mugs, Stoker and Wells mugs. We're going to have, Billy doesn't know it, but his exclusive cover, which was not offered to people signed, will be a special goal, a special thing to be signed. All of that to kind of feed us into, right now I have, my agents are trying to hook the whole property up with another, with a publisher. So that rather than doing it through crowdfunding, perhaps doing a more traditional route. Again, that's not a lock, and if it's not, I'm going to go and do it the way we did it, which was through crowdfunding. But the TV rights, I'm now working with a producer and a production company that's now taking it out as a series, as book one to be a series. So part of me is holding back because I also want the launch of the second book to perhaps be tied into news about a television production, a series based on the first book. So
that would be fantastic.
Cool. That would be awesome.
A lot of exciting stuff going on with it. Thanks for asking.
Now, Charlie's, with your book, I mean, this is your first campaign. This is your first graphic novel. Obviously, you've just gone out of the start of the gates here, just crushing it. Where do you go after this? Are you gonna continue on with the Chaplin series, Charlie's London?
I've got a 3-book contract.
Nice.
So the next one's going to be sort of from 1921 to, I think it's going to be the sort of the Great Dictator. And then the third book is going to be his later life, incorporating getting his knighthood, getting his standing ovation at the Oscars. And it's pretty much going to, because he does make, the theme of this book is every book sort of ends with a trip back to London, and he does that in 21, he does it in 31, he obviously does it in 52, but he does it in 75 as well. So the idea is that he did, like, it's well documented, he did go round his whole old haunts every time he came over, even when he was in his late 70s, early 80s. So it works really, really well with the book that you will get this. You'll get this. The only thing that I really want to do, and I've promised this to myself, is that the one area that I think the Robert Downey Jr. film really lets itself down is if you accumulated the books of Chaplin's autobiography into the scandal and sexuality of his life, it's probably amounts to no more than about 15 pages. I felt like the Robert Downey Jr. film weighed so heavy on that. And from my understanding, David Robinson did actually say this to Attenborough on the set. And he said, yes, but this stuff sells. I don't want to do that. I want this book to be based around the idea that you're getting Charlie's London. This is what it is. So, I mean, and to be fair, my original thing was how Charlie's London started was I used to blog about these different places in London and how they had a connection to Chaplin. So my Twitter was always Charlie's London. And then when I was trying to think of a title for this book, it was Ethan that said, I remember him saying, when you do a book, you do it from the gut and you do it from the heart, and it should be what you want to do. And it just suddenly came to me, and I went, I'll call it Charlie's London then, because it's about Charlie going around. Like, everybody knows me on social media as Charlie's London. No one else can claim a right to that name. There's nothing else to do with Chaplin that's Charlie's London. Even everybody with the Chaplin world knows me as Charlie's London. They know me as my real name, obviously, but they know that I run Charlie's London. The Chaplins follow me on Twitter. You know, they follow me on Facebook. My Charlie's London page has got about 5,000 followers on it on Facebook. So I just thought, well, it's a no-brainer. Call it what you know, and that's kind of how it all became what it is.
Yeah, I think it's a brilliant name. I think it's a brilliant name for this series and your brand. I mean, it really caught. It's catching a lot of eyes and a lot of attention. It's perfect.
Absolutely.
Stan,
I'm excited to pledge and to get a look at it. When do you foresee completion?
So it finishes. The campaign will finish on about the 15th of December, and then I'm pretty much going to get everything into production. I mean, what my plan is that, from what I know, Billy, you can correct me on this if I'm wrong. When your first 30 days is up on Indiegogo, they start releasing the funds. So my plan is to get like all of the prints, the one shot, the postcards, the patches, all that stuff printed and ready to go. Like, you know, it's going to sit in boxes. And then when all the pages and books are done, I'm going to do exactly the same thing. So my plan is by about January, February, I'll have them and I'll start fulfilling, because my campaign fulfillment date is April. And it's April because, me being very nostalgic and keeping in with the theme of everything, I wanted everybody to have these books in their hands by the 16th of April, which is Chaplin's birthday.
Right. Gotcha.
So I was trying to do so it's about me working out all these little things, and that's the plan I've got, because I've got everything else ready to go apart from the actual main book. So that's what the big plan is in my head anyway.
Excellent. Will this be available outside of the campaign though? Like, once you're all done and you're fulfilled, will you be selling this on an online store or anything of that nature?
Yeah. So I'll continue to sell it. I will probably leave the Indiegogo in demand, because you can do that.
Yep, like your store.
Also, I'm approaching some like British-based bookshops, because I am going to get an ISBN for it. I have got permission from the Chaplins as well that I can go to like Comic-Cons and things like that and have stands. Silent film festivals have spoken to me about having it. There's a big one in Bristol called Slapstick. I know the guys that run that. They're really keen when it comes back. It should be back in January, but with everything going on, we don't know if it will be. They really want to get me to sort of come and talk about the book and have books available to sell. I know Pordenone and Bologna there. I can approach that. There's so many avenues of places. Amazon, of course, all these different things. But it's mine. It's like my book. So once my backers have got it, because that's the most important thing to me, that all the backers get it first, I'm just going to do whatever. And I can reprint them as many times as I want. Like I say, I can't give the Chaplins, I can't give them, you know, they have been amazing. They are letting me have so much free reign with this. And I send a lot of things over to them, a lot of the time out of courtesy, because I want them to see it and I want the transparency. But I know that I've worked with them for so long now, they're quite happy to let me get on with quite a lot of it, because they know that nothing I do is going to be disrespectful to the brand.
Was there ever any anything in particular that was said to you by the estate that mattered to them, that was a concern to them, that they hoped you would do or wouldn't do with this book along the way? Otherwise, it's more like they'll tell you if something bothers them, and so far they haven't found anything that bothers them.
Yep. I sent the first 3 pages, or the roughs of the first 3 pages, over 2-3 weeks ago now, and what I got back was, I love that this is starting with Limelight. I don't want to give too much away before the pages go up, but they love where it's going next. And I'm just going to keep on doing that. And if there's anything, I mean, because I said to them, the books I'm using are David's book and Chaplin's own words, and they know that I'm keeping it historically accurate, I don't think they've got to worry, because I think they very much run the estate the way that if Charlie was alive, he would have run it. And that's that he was very human and had flaws, and he understands that people are going to talk about his flaws.
Mhm.
And I think that as a result of that, I think that's kind of where it is. I mean, if anything comes up, obviously we'd address it, but I can't foresee I'm going to do anything that's going to be anything in that book that they're going to have to worry about.
Oh, you wait to see my pinup.
Oh dear.
Debauchery.
Totally.
Randy. It's going to be a Randy pinup. Now, his story is, if we go through the covers, Ayse, I'll say it. What the hell? I keep trying to stop myself. Ayse had asked me, it was my honor to do a cover for her. And I was going to do a variant cover. And then I saw this pinup.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, that's your cover. Look at that.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think it's extraordinary. And thankfully you followed my advice. And you look, what a great cover. I mean, is it your... I know, our buddy Vinny, of course, did a beautiful cover, but there's just something magical about this cover. I think, Stan?
Yes, I love that it's only 5 cents.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was done on purpose, because we found out that comics in the 1930s were about 10 cents. So this was meant to be in the early sort of 1910s or 1920s. So we sort of went, well, they'd be about 5 cents roughly by inflation or all sorts of things. So we had it as 5 cents. But if you actually look on the indent there, it's got the 16th of April is the date on it.
Oh,
rather than having the actual date.
There you go. Yeah.
So we've really paid attention to detail with all of this little stuff.
We have a comment here by Lewis, and he had spoken to you through Twitter about this. Ken, is there any way someone could pledge you by paying you through PayPal?
The only issue that I can think, I mean, if that's what you want to do, you can do. If that's what you've done, I'll find the message on Twitter and I'll get back to you. I don't think there is any problem with that if somebody wants to make a payment. I mean, I'm quite happy as long as there's sort of no breach of any form of data protection for anybody. That's completely fine with me. I mean, anyone needs any help getting the books, I'll help them as best as I can.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Fantastic.
Being in touch with the estate as you are with the people, I don't know if you guys know, but there was a break-in a couple of years ago, and Charlie Chaplin's Oscar, the first Oscar that he got in '28, was stolen, and it has not been recovered since, right?
Mm-hmm. Not that I know of. I didn't. To be honest, I only know a little bit about that. I only know that it was stolen. So I don't really know much more of the story.
I didn't know that. What did he win an Oscar for?
In 1928, at the first Academy Awards, the Academy gave him a special Oscar for writing, acting, directing, and producing The Circus.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yep.
And then in 1972, he was given the honorary one, but Chaplin did win a competitive Oscar the next year for Limelight for the music. And what people don't know is that when Marlon, this is great. I don't know if you can use this in your novel, but it's a cool story. When Marlon Brando refused his Academy Award, they had one Academy Award left over. And when they sent Chaplin his Academy Award for Limelight, it was the award that they gave Sacheen Littlefeather that she refused. So basically, Chaplin's Limelight Oscar is the Oscar for Marlon Brando's performance in
I did not know that. I know that he and Marlon Brando didn't get on at all.
No.
I know that.
No.
I think
Well, I mean, he was Brando and he was Chaplin, and you get the two of them together. Right. So is Stan Laurel featured in the actual book, or is it just the print?
No, it's a one shot, so it's about 24 pages, and it's about them with Fred Carno traveling. So basically, it starts with Jimmy the Fearless and how Chaplin had this part and he really didn't want it, and then he gave it up and they gave it to Stan Laurel, and Stan Laurel did really well in it, and then Chaplin wanted it back and Chaplin got it back, and as far as I know, Chaplin wasn't actually as good in it as Stan Laurel was, but there was but then it does depend who you talk to, because if you talk to AJ Marriott, Stan Laurel was much better. If you talk to David, so yeah, there's a lot of things going on there. But I do know that I was able to use Stan Laurel because Stan Laurel's image is not in copyright. His Hal Roach stuff and his films is in copyright, but this story to do with them two over that 18-month period, there is no copyright attachment, so I could use it very happily. And because I have Charlie's image rights, even the image rights that are owned by the estate that this picture is based on, I'm pretty sure I'm covered. If suddenly someone starts challenging it, I'm sure I'll handle it as best I can, but I don't think that's going to be a problem. But it's essentially about how they actually were quite good friends on that 18 months touring around the States, and how their artistry rubbed off on each other. And even to the point that when Stan Laurel couldn't really get work in sort of 1914 and 1915, and Chaplin had massively made it, like with Keystone and whatever, he was a Charlie Chaplin impersonator. So it sort of looks at how Stan Laurel suddenly found his niche as wanting to be part of a double act that would later come to fruition, but Chaplin didn't want to hog the limelight with anyone. Pardon the pun. So,
and of course,
it's
they met in the 30s. Did you hear about how they met on the water?
No.
They met. Okay, this is so cool. Chaplin is on the Panacea, or that was the boat, and Stan Laurel was on his yacht, and then the two of them saw each other as the boats were getting together, and then they tied up together, and they spent a whole afternoon reminiscing. And at this point, Stan was one half of Laurel and Hardy, and apparently was very amicable and very lovely. And it's just such a sweet little, it's a little tidbit to know. But AJ Marriott, yes. When you talk to Laurel and Hardy fans, Stan was the better person. When you talk to Chaplin fans, Chaplin's the better one. But the good part for you is that if enough Laurel and Hardy people know about this publication, that's going to bring a whole new wave of people to you.
Well, that was one of the reasons why. There was two reasons I did it as a one shot. One, I didn't want to detract from the main story because I didn't want to veer it off too much. Equally, I thought doing it as a one shot, people that are not Chaplin fans but Stan Laurel fans could buy it and not have to have a book necessarily that they wouldn't want, just to read one fraction of it. But I can tell you now that as an add-on on my campaign, it's selling so many. The amount of people that are buying that and buying the one shot, like buying the main book, buying the one shot, is really huge. So I think it was a good idea. But if you have a look at it, the William Crawford Hazel, who's drawn Stan Laurel, it's insane. Like the artwork is beautiful. I'm really, really lucky with the people that are working on this, and it's such a professional looking campaign. The artwork is so stunning. I can't fault it at all. I really can't.
Beautiful.
So you should be very proud of yourself.
Yes.
Well deserved. You work your butt off. We are not going to do. You've been doing some seriously marathon streams. I can't believe you still have a voice. We're not going to do that to you. We're going to wrap it up because our new plan with the Pop XP, right, Nile, is to have a more civilized show. 45 minutes to an hour, and now we're already coming on. An hour 39.
Yeah, that's been our plan since we launched in 2019 or something, 2019 or something. I don't know. But yeah, guys out there, help spread the word. Share on your Facebook, your Twitter, your Instagram. Help spread the word of Charlie's London, from East Lane to the Limelight. Gorgeous, gorgeous book telling just a true story of Charlie Chaplin, who's just, in my eyes, the greatest comedian that's ever hit the cinema, and an absolute gem. And Charlie's London is a gem for bringing this to this medium in this level of professionalism and quality.
Can I also add, and I'm sure Dan will back me up on this, It's actually where Chaplin was born is actually called East Street. It's East Street Market is where he was born, and I know it very, very well growing up there. Only South Londoners call it the Lane. Only South Londoners call it East Lane, which is why I called it East Lane, because in the introduction, in the newest edition of Charlie's autobiography, David Robinson himself actually says that Charlie referred to it as the Lane. So there's all these weird ways of people say that where he was born. There's this whole new thing. Apparently he was born in a gypsy camping in Birmingham. Well, it doesn't matter if he was born on Mars. He grew up in South London. South London was very important to him, and he called East Street the Lane. And also, East Street is where Easy Street comes from, and the street that is used as an inspiration is somewhere called Lemon Court, which doesn't exist anymore, but it's where my grandmother was born. And if I was to show you the pictures, it's the set of East Street.
Wow.
100%. So this is another thing with this book. Calling it East Lane was it was done on purpose.
If we can ever get you to come to the States, I'll be happy to give you a tour of the La Brea studio.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can get you to come to the Cinecon Classic Film Festival, you'll have hundreds of people.
Oh, I'd 100% love to. I was very nervous being on here with you tonight because I've read so much stuff today. And I was like, I literally clicked on the link being like, I'm having imposter syndrome on here. I'm going to sound like I know absolutely nothing I'm talking about.
It's so funny because Steve told me, he's like, you gotta get Stan on. What do you ask Stan? I mean, oh my God, he does this, that. I'm like, yeah, that's great. So I emailed Stan, would you like to come on? He's like, yeah, absolutely.
The Chaplin studios are literally walking distance from where you're seeing me right now, and I always marvel every time I go by there, and that cars are whizzing by. No one knows, what it is. Well, I mean, it's now the Henson Studios, and it's still, they've preserved it very, very lovingly, and there are some Chaplin images there, and they have the Kermit the Frog in the Chaplin outfit, tipping his hat up on top there.
There's a story about the local community were really up in arms about him building this studio. So he had it, I'm sure this is true, he had a postcard of Stratford-upon-Avon, and he decided to base the fronts of the buildings on this village in Stratford-upon-Avon where Shakespeare was born. I thought I'd seen that somewhere.
It looks like a walled-in village. That's what it looks like. Like very, very, very old English.
And in the 20s, when Los Angeles had to widen streets because it was getting more popular, the entire studio had to be moved a couple of feet.
That's crazy.
And instead of raising it, destroying it, they moved the whole thing over.
Yeah, Charlie's. It's in the middle of the city. It's in a very busy, not particularly pretty part of Hollywood, and but it's always amazes me to see the photos of it by itself, and it being a dirt road and trees and farmland, like nothing, and there's this studio.
It was orange and lemon. It was orange and lemon groves.
Yeah.
And by the way, you talked about Kate before, who I've never met, but we've been friends for years. About 4 years ago, someone had footage that was taken right after Charlie did not come back to the country, and they filmed Raleigh Tothero going through the studio, and you saw all the props. The film appeared on eBay, and then people started bidding, and I contacted Kate, and I told her about it, and I said, and I put out all these calls and told all my friends and all the film archivists, do not bid. The Chaplin estate wants this, and I know that Kate was very grateful because they did win it, and Serge Bromberg, probably know.
Yeah.
And he's been a great friend. He did the restoration of it, and now we have footage. And it's amazing that every couple of years, new footage. I just got a home movie someone took in 1952 of in Kodachrome color, no fade color, of everything that was premiering in 1952 in New York. And they actually filmed the gigantic Limelight animated marquee when the film was premiering in New York. And no one has seen it. I have not released it. And I'm not even sure what to do with it yet because it's so fantastic looking. It's amazing that even in 52, when he wasn't in the country, it was an amazing spectacle.
Well, here's what I need to ask the two of you. Chaplin's eye color.
Blue.
blue.
100% blue. In fact, I'm not getting that close to this camera, but they are exactly the same as my colouring is exactly the same. This is.
Can you go like this?
Huh? Can I go like
this? Yeah. With a little like a comb or something.
They were 100% blue. Look, see, they are blue, very blue.
We're almost done.
So what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to get Stan and Charlie's down to San Diego Comic-Con, Steve. And
absolutely.
Stan, you're gonna have to bring a projector and some cans.
Oh,
Maybe one night we'll just show it in the Marriott in the back, and we'll have them make a little pop-up screen, and we'll sit out there by the fire.
I do want to make a factual correction. I'd mentioned David Tothero. He is the grandson of Roland Tothero, and he went back and talked to his dad. That's why there was a moment he talked to his dad, Jack, at the time. And then Jack confirmed that what he'd always, because he talked to his dad about everything, including the Thomas Ince, and Jack had remembered his dad saying that his father had been, that he remembered him being picked up to go. So I just want to make that lineage clear for anybody listening.
Ayse, Lutiart has something here for you, it seems.
My dad has a signed piece by Charlie. He says you can have it. Oh, wow. Really? That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
I
so
wasn't expecting that.
are you helping him out with the PayPal book? You guys can talk on Twitter.
I will. When we get off here, I'll go and have a look on Twitter. But two things I wanted to say before.
It's got something for Stan too.
Oh,
yes.
You like this a signed photo and a reel?
Sorry.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Absolutely. Yes.
Just two things I want to say before we wrap up, because I know you guys want to wrap up. I've got, it's over there. I'm not going to take it off the wall because I don't want to touch it, but I've got a Keystone promotional card that is signed by Charlie, and it's signed Charlie Chaplin, and it's him as himself, and it was bought for me for my 30th by my parents. And it's never been authorized because David told me, don't authorize that. I can authorize. Why are you going to pay someone over £100 to get that authorized when you know me? Just let me have a look at it. And I showed him, and he was like, no, it's 100%. And the other thing that I've got, which he gave me for my birthday, I've got his copy of the premiere book from the premiere of Limelight. He gave it to me for my 30th birthday.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, this is how personal this is for me. And it's funny. I'm talking to you about all the same people. I know all the same people you do.
Well,
you and I know
it. Down to Comic-Con, Charlie, you're going to be a huge success. You know, and you'll be down at Comic-Con.
Yeah. When this whole mess is over, we can start traveling again.
Right.
I'm going to be taking this book everywhere I can get it.
Yeah.
And you know what I'll do for Comic-Con? I actually own one of Charlie Chaplin's own personal film prints. I have his personal film print of Dough and Dynamite, and I'll bring that.
Oh, Dough and Dynamite!
Wow.
Yeah, he gave it to Billy Gilbert on the set of The Great Dictator as a present.
Oh my gosh!
Nice.
I have that.
Well, all right, Nile. What do you say? I mean, Charlie's you're doing incredible. We're so proud of you. I mean, you were just a gal with a dream a few months ago, and now you've got probably one of the hottest books on Indiegogo.
It's trending.
Yeah,
I was so like my best friend phoned me up and she went, you know that little obsession you've had since we were kids? It's trending right now.
And everybody out there,
gorgeous.
You can see it, like I said, say no to cancel culture, and you know how it's rearing its ugly head, and it's happening today on Twitter with the whole thing with Chaplin calling him a pedophile and all this crap. And it was funny because when I saw it was trending too, and this is after I shared this show, I'm like, what? You know? And then I looked at it.
Do your research, people. Do your research.
Oh yeah, just go and do your research. 100%. That's all you need to do. Go do your research.
Well, that's Stan, Steve, Charlie's, thank you so much for coming on tonight. It's been a pleasure. Charlie's, we will be in touch with you. You have a couple show ideas we'd like you to be a part of if you're willing. Yes. So Billy and I will be in touch with you shortly. Stan, it's always great having you on. I love listening to you talk on here with our, A Century of Horror with the whole panel team. I mean, you guys rock with some crazy, awesome information, and I love it. We gotta keep it going, guys. Keep it going.
Absolutely.
Once we're done with horror, to the next genre and the next genre. You know, one thing I gotta. are we able to stream films and kind of talk while the film's playing on YouTube? Is that allowed?
Don't think
silent
so.
film. Why not? And isn't a
Public
lot of
domain. If it's public domain, it is.
Well, I think you have the freedom. I think there's a Fair Use Act if you're doing commentary of film and stuff.
Well, Chaplin. I mean, there are 62 films you can run with no problem.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, let's do that.
That would be cool. We should do like a stream one night, and we can, have a film going, talk about the film.
The Keystone, SNAs, the Mutuals, you just can't do the First Nationals. You pretty much can't do anything after 1918. And the thing is, even if you give you permission, YouTube will just shut you down and they'll strike you until you get the Chaplin estate to contact them to get it removed, and that's a pain. So,
it's a problem because Chaplin's a British subject. That's why we can't show the First Nationals. Well, actually, we technically can run the First Nationals without his music. So anything 1924 and older, we can run. But a friend of mine ran The Kid, but because The Kid is technically copywritten in England, it was shut down, and he was playing his own original music. So it was a very unique brand. But you can run the Mutuals, which is amazing. That Chaplin was offered, by the way, to buy the Mutuals outright, and he turned it down and said, "They're not worth anything. Who wants to see those?" And for my money, that's 12 pack of silent short subjects of all time.
Jeez. In the Keystone film,
there, Nile.
I'm sorry, Charlie.
I did that for a charity event for something to do with a Comic-Con about 2 years ago. And I sent it to Kate, and she was like, "Oh my God." So yeah, that's me and one of my friends dressed as Chaplin and Paulette Goddard.
That's great.
That's fantastic.
The Keystone Studio, Steve, do you know this? I think the building is still there. They started in Bayshore, New York, on Long Island.
I did not know that. Stan, where is it?
What, the Keystone Studio? You mean public storage in Edendale?
No, the one in Long Island.
Oh, I thought you meant here. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, you're talking about the Long Island one. I'm not sure where that one is.
Yeah, it's right off of like Union Boulevard, south of Sunrise Highway.
And the building is still there, you're saying?
The building is still there, yep.
Yeah.
They want to preserve it.
Nobody there knows, I'm sure.
And the Vitagraph smokestack is still there. The old Vitagraph Studio smokestack, which still says Vitagraph in New York. But it's amazing. No, but the public storage unit is still around. Max Sennett's Keystone Studio. I was there for the unveiling of the plaque that we found, which was the plaque that Max Sennett was given on television, and they placed it at the old Sea League studio.
Wow.
That's incredible.
I didn't know that. That's pretty cool.
That's another
listen,
story.
Charlie, continued success. Stan and Steven, so looking forward to the 30th when we do Century of Horror, 1934 and 35.
Billy, we're going to be back on with She Writers Panel, you and I.
Yeah, but I'm going to move that.
Okay.
Just because I'd rather be closer to the launch.
Yeah, absolutely.
If that's all right with you, and we have
fine with me.
But we'll definitely do that. And then, what was I going to say?
Oh, we'll be back then when we launch. Yeah, we will be launching. Then you and I will coordinate with She to then launch the Indiegogo of Stoker and Wells, and I'll be on with my artist and my editor.
And Stoker and
we'll
Wells is completely done.
Yep, completely done.
Printed and everything already.
It's amazing. It's an amazing book.
Here, and we have the Billy Tucci cover, Billy's exclusive cover that's never been seen by anyone. Billy, which is actually not only rare for it being Billy Tucci, but it's an early and then ultimately altered version of our heroine, who ultimately wound up looking like this in the book. This is the back of the book, but Billy was working off of an early concept, so it's a gorgeous. Billy did such a beautiful job with this exclusive cover he did for us. So we'll be offering those signed by Billy. I'll ship them out to him, have him sign and send them back, but that'll be limited because we have a limited number. We'll go over all that on that show.
Yep, and we're going to be ending She Return of the Warrior. We're going to be closing that campaign. That's when we'll do the writers thing a day or two before that.
Okay.
And I'm just excited for those who might not have been here earlier on. I sent 30 pages, the first 30 pages of the 48-page story to Brian Miller and Hi-Fi Design, and they're going to start coloring it. So I'm hoping to we'll have all the line art of that book and all the lettering completely done before we even launch, and hopefully 2/3 of the book colored by the time we launch. So it's going to be a real short camp. Once that window's over, those 30 days on Indiegogo, and it's going to be an Indiegogo exclusive, we're going to the printer. That's the goal. So thank you all for supporting us.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
So real quick. I know everybody wants to go. Stan and Steve, can we please fit in Babes in Toyland / March of the Wooden Soldiers into a Century of Horror 1934-35?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Nothing scared most people as much as the Bogeyman.
Yes. Did you ever see that movie, Ayse?
Oh, Henry Brandon.
I think so.
The Babes in Toyland. I don't know what was it called across the pond. Was it Babes in Toyland or was it March of
the Toys?
I think it was March of the Toys because Babes in Toy. But then saying that, I think I've also seen Babes in Toyland.
Actually, it was Auerbach Film Limited released it as Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy in Toyland, and I have that title. How do I know this stuff? Oh my God, yeah, no. But I'd be happy. I knew friends. I had friends who were in that film, so I have great stories from Jerry Tucker and Henry Brandon, who were in that film, and that'd be, for us, that is a great film for Halloween. And I can tell you about the Bogeyman and how the films were edited because they thought it was too scary for children. So the close-ups of the Bogeyman were
grabbing children out of their beds.
Yeah. I still get. I got to tell you, I purposely watch that film once a year. I have it on DVD. I have it on VHS somewhere still. But I get goosebumps when they start up those wooden soldiers. I really do.
Yeah.
I'm a kid again, all over again.
And 7 of those wooden soldiers survive to this day.
Wow.
Oh wow.
Wait, the little ones or the life-size outfits? Okay, the little ones.
The little ones, the little ones, and some of them don't have feet because they were on tracks as they were rolled.
Okay.
Oh,
That's cool.
Oh God, it is.
I love it. The music, the whole thing. My gosh.
We'll save the story for the Century of Horror.
And Lou, I will talk to you. I have a cover of that comic for you, Lou. So don't worry. I'll talk to you about it.
And Lou, contact me about that thing.
I have one for Lou. All right, Nile.
Perfect. All right, everyone. Thank you so much, and we'll see you tomorrow night. We're gonna do a crowdfunding comics episode. We'll have Andy Smith on. We have Drew Eshan, and we have William Quintel. So make sure to tune in tomorrow night at 9 as we go through a couple more campaigns. Everyone, thanks again. Please share Charlie's London from East Lane to the Limelight on your Twitter, Instagram, Facebooks. Help push this amazing book, an amazing story about an amazing man by an amazing author. So everyone, have yourselves a great night, and we will see you all tomorrow night at 9 p.m.
Hey, Nile, real quick. Can we play the ending? Can I'm sorry. I queued up the ending of The Kid. Can that take us out?
That ending?
Oh, hang on. I want to
wait. If it has music, well, this is not YouTube, so.
No, it is.
Yeah, I know. They'll cut it off.
Oh,
don't do it.
Damn it.
Yeah, this is a good show that people might want to see. And
okay, you've got it. Well, go check it out on YouTube, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Oh, we just got a super chat. Let me get that up here really quick. Thank you, Swinging Cod, $5. Charlie's has been a gift to our community. That is very true.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. Have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow at 9 p.m. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the Pop XP. Hey everyone, thank you for joining us on Pop XP. If you haven't already, make sure to click that subscribe button and also click the bell for notifications when we go live and we upload some awesome new content. Also, don't forget to head on over to Twitter and follow us at the Pop XP and over on Instagram at the Pop XP. Thanks again everyone, and we'll see you soon.